Okay. My eyes are not so good now, so I'm going to have to look at it really close. Anyway, I'll read my own book.
Okay, can you move back a little bit?
The light
It's
is
okay.
shining.
I'm all right. Okay. I've continued to work on the theory of the gift economy because after years of trying to practice it in the foundation, I realized that the theory of a maternal economy is missing in society as a whole. As much as we may practice gift-giving unconsciously or consciously, or try to bring forth social change based on it, if we do not understand what we are doing and why, if we do not know the structural and systemic reasons for the dire situation we are in and the reasons for our commitment to the gift, we will never make the necessary far-reaching radical changes. The point is to generalize gift giving, to generalize the model of mothering in abundance, to understand the impediments to this generalization and dismantle them. The privileged few, individuals and corporations, control most of the academic world through funding, a manipulative use of gifting, and they influence research to feed back to them ideas that help them make more money and maintain their positions. I want to challenge their beliefs as well as the beliefs of the many who have been influenced by education. This book is addressed to everyone at all levels of society. Even those who now have money and power had mothers and caregivers. Even they can make a paradigm shift, and they must if the future is to be saved. I remember when I was young, listening to and eventually participating in many discussions. Personal opinions were very important in my parents' milieu, under a kind of general rubric of patriotism and Euro-American and family exceptionalism. Recently, I went back to my hometown and participated in a dinner table conversation that was much the same as many I had listened to as a child. We argued politely until the pater familias imposed his point of view. I realized that to change that point of view and similar ones, which together create a great hinterland of the conservative decision-making in the U.S., a radically different approach is necessary. It is difficult to give a radically different approach at the dinner table. Perhaps this book can help others who want to make inroads in the hinterland by changing the conversation. There is now widespread unhappiness in the USA and around the globe. Poverty, racism, economic violence, mass murders, sexual violence, police brutality, gang brutality, fear, disillusionment, objectification through consumerism and advertising. Porn takes the place of love and even of personal erotic dreams. Trafficking in children, women, men, organs, and arms are some of the new permutations of exchange and force. Wars are fought on pretext, but they actually serve the economy of the arms industries and oil companies. Water, seeds, forests, species, knowledges are privatized and made scarce. Maternal gifts bring trust, while exchange breeds suspicion, but detours around it through an equation of value. State terrorism is the paranoid mode of attack and reprisal corresponding to advanced, so-called advanced corporate capitalism worldwide. Instead of our neighbors spying on us and reporting to the government, as happened during Stalinism, the government does it directly. The great gift potential of the free internet has become the means of access of the government and of commerce into our lives and minds. As situations worsen, learned powerlessness takes the place of creative initiatives for change. Those who do take truthful initiatives become pariahs, subject to government attack. Witness Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden. The prison industrial complex allies with the military industrial complex. and the food and agricultural industrial complex to control and exploit us. The appeal to free speech allows the media to engage in deep propaganda and manipulation by misinformation, advertising even to babies and young children, so that their gift economy years are polluted by the market. Education is seen as a solution to poverty, but is counted as successful when the educated are integrated into the system that creates the poverty, when they understand and believe its principles and operate in it with profit. Students are encouraged to study STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects on the edge of environmental disaster that the STEM activities have created. Inventions of war, like drones, embody the psychotic detached intellect to the extent that people far away can be killed on command by the flick of a finger of an operator following orders at home. Widespread poverty, violence, and disease are the fate of the many, while the very few are stratospherically rich. Most of all, though, the winds are rising and the earth is shaking. Hurricanes, tornadoes, freak storms, typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes, and upheavals abound. Chasms and sinkholes are opening. The ice is melting and the sea is dying. We are all concerned at some level, but we are trying to ignore what we have done. Again, that forgiving, that forgetting. I believe that the way out of this disaster is to revalue the mother-child relation and the paradigm of the generous mother in abundance. Presently, the system has to create enough scarcity to force people to work for money. Mothers are disempowered and made to overgive and self-sacrifice by this scarcity and the accompanying lack of community. Typically, the system blames the victim, but in this case, the mother, liberated from victimization, is actually the solution to overturning the system and doing so non-violently. All of us have been mothered to some extent, or we would not have survived. And we have the model of mothering within us for both material and verbal gift-giving. If the model of mothering structures language, it is our main communicative way of action, our main guideline as we cross the narrow bridge over the abyss. I hope this book will show how patriarchy and the market have altered our humanity, making us believe that we are part of a nature red in tooth and claw instead of a cooperative and creative, nurturing species at home on Mother Earth. Unfortunately, we have fulfilled the old negative prophecy. It is time for a positive new one. Questions? That?
How does your recent book differ from your original book, Forgiving?
This one is more more detailed. I think it's probably more academic. It has more reasoning behind it. It has some new ideas in it. But it's still the same theme. Still, I mean, I guess everybody only has one book in them, really. At least I do.
Now, Miss Vaughan, you know well that you have published several books for children, and I'm sure that you have more than one book. I was just wondering if there was a significant difference, a more focus on language or more of a focus on...
This has much more focus on language. Yeah, I think I suggested it in the Forgiving, but I have tried to spell it out in this book. Come on, question? Yeah.
So you mentioned that really it's the maternal source that we should be looking towards or moving towards. So how do you create buy-in from men in our community?
Well, you know, I think feminism has done quite a good job about educating men towards caregiving. and sharing work in the home. And I don't know, in Italy there are lots of men who are taking care of their kids. I think in the U.S. also. It's really different from the way it was when I grew up. I mean, it may not look like much. It's not enough, but it's sure different from the 1940s.
I want to talk about home economics. I never really wanted a career. I wanted to be a housewife and mother, like my mother. And so I majored in home economics. And now the university has pretty much obliterated it, and it doesn't exist anymore in the schools. And the whole drive is to force people to eat out of the drive-through windows instead of buying groceries and knowing how to cook or even grow their own. Yeah. So there's a damper put on the women's function in society. And when I was getting my degree, I went to a degree check and they said, well, yes, you have all the courses, prepare to earn 200. And I said, 250, and I went, 250. So I went up to the woman that was monitoring the group and I said, is that a week or a month? And she said, oh, that's a month. And I went, what did I major in? You know, like there's no careers in taking care of. There's no careers in doing for others. It's not economic to be a caregiver.
Well, you know, there's a big movement now about caring labor and paying housework and paying caring labor more. And there's this woman, Rihanna Eisler, who has that book called The Real Wealth of Nations, and she talks about women's work and valuing it. But there's a paradox there, because you value women's work, you're paying it, and then you assimilate it into the exchange economy, into the market. And so it doesn't remain visible anymore as something free. And it doesn't validate the things that are free. So there are lots of, let's say, fail-safes in the market, in capitalism, to keep things from changing. And that's one paradox that makes it difficult to change. Because, I mean, if men were doing housework as well, it would be a different thing too. But we need an economy which is all based on free work, not on paid work.
Jen, do you see the growth of the exchange economy as greater here in the U.S. or in what you see in Europe?
Well, you mean the gift economy?
I'm sorry, the gift economy. I apologize.
Right. Yeah. Well, just because I've participated more in Europe, I guess I've seen it more in Europe. But it really is everywhere. And if you look online, I've got all these different groups that are cooperatives, that are groups that are doing all kinds of social change things, that I'm on their e-list, and so I see all about them, in Italy as well. And it's a really, it's like a moment of things boiling up, you know, lots and lots of different kinds of initiatives are taking place, both here and there. But there was just now a conference in Italy on the commons, and people came from the U.S. and all over Europe and went and talked there and shared their different ways of dealing with the commons, trying to create commons. But now, I mean, there are also a lot of writers on the gift economy. And you may be surprised to know that in Italy there are like 20 different academics that are talking about the gift economy. And, but there are none of them talking about the mothering. None of them are talking about this maternal root. And so we had a conference on, which was called The Maternal Root of the Gift Economy. And invited a lot of these Italian speakers and also international women speakers, and tried to put the idea of the mothering into the general discourse on the gift economy. I think maybe we did. Oh. Yeah.
I've thought a lot about reparations, and I thought about it particularly a lot this week since Naomi Klein said that we will not as a global community move forward on resolving climate change unless we embrace the idea of reparations. So I'm curious where you think reparations fits in this, in this spectrum between gift economy and exchange economy.
Well, I think reparations mean that the people that are paying them have taken responsibility for what they've done. And I think that's important. However, I don't think I think we should not be using money to recognize or to show our responsibility. On the other hand, moving from where we are now to a gift economy like a matriarchal economy or an indigenous economy is a pretty long road. And so we need stages along that road. And reparations can be one of the stages.
So Jen, in the gift economy, then, let's say if it was functional, we wouldn't use money. Money wouldn't be necessary, right?
Right. We would really avoid it. Well, there are some different kinds of alternative currencies that people are using now, and time banking. Those all make it necessary to quantify what you gave and what you're going to get. And I think we should just avoid all of that and try to live without money at all. Because I think there's some negative psychological parts of that that you can't really get rid of. I mean, you can get rid of almost anything negative if you're conscious enough about it, but it's very hard to do that, especially on a wide scale. Yeah?
So, from a strategic planning perspective, what would you suggest might be among your first 2 or 3 steps that the world could take to move into a gift economy?
Well, I think actually it's already happening. Like I said, there's so many different projects out there now that people are trying to do different things, doing things differently. They've realized what a terrible moment we're in and how we're about to destroy the environment and the world, ourselves, and so forth, and all the creatures. And so at this moment of consciousness of the problem, we also need to be conscious of the solution. So we need to think in terms of the gift economy. We need to go back and validate and value mothering and change our values towards that and away from the exchange economy and the market. And all of the X equals Y equals Z part of the market, all the way it's quantified. And the way people are graded, for example, even in school, it's always A, B, C, D. You're always being graded. Are you a good product or a bad product? Well, do you get $100 or do you get $50? And it is something that pervades our minds, and we don't realize that's what it is. Yeah.